Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am sharing with you the results from the surgery I had a few weeks ago. For those of you who are new here, I will link my infertility playlist up above in the iCard as well as in the description box below. That way, if you're not familiar with everything that has been going on the last few years, you can go ahead and catch up on that. On May 6th, which was about 2 weeks ago, I had a laparoscopy, a hysteroscopy, and a DNC. And the main reason why I had this surgery was based on the recommendation from my fertility specialist. He was, from my very first appointment with him, he was convinced that I have endometriosis, and the only way to diagnose endometriosis is through surgery. I decided to move forward with that and had the surgery to find out if I have endometriosis or not. For those of you who follow along here on YouTube or through my Instagram, you know that I was extremely nervous before going into the surgery, and my main concern was going through the surgery and being told that nothing was wrong. One of the most difficult things for me throughout this journey was being told that we have unexplained infertility, and the question of why hung over my head and ate away at me. It was just very difficult for me not knowing why we can't get pregnant. Infertility is just so difficult on its own. It's such a difficult thing to go through. But not having an explanation as to why we can't get pregnant was just like, it was just extremely difficult for me. So having the surgery, it was the right thing to do to know whether or not I have endometriosis. So I went through and had the surgery, and after the surgery, once I was coherent enough, afterwards, the nurses brought my husband John back to the recovery room with me, and I was kind of going in and out of sleep, so my memory is a little fuzzy, but I remember him sitting there. I remember crying for some reason, but when they brought John back, I had no idea what happened. So when John finally was brought back, I remember crying, and I remember telling him, they didn't find anything wrong with me, did they? And I remember John, I think he like put his hand on my head or something, and he looked at me and said, "You have endometriosis." And he explained that my doctor found endometriosis and adhesions from it all throughout my pelvis, and that I have stage 3 endometriosis. And if you aren't aware, there are 4 stages of endometriosis, 4 being the most severe type. So I was stage 3. Really quickly, I want to read to you, I have it on my phone here, what exactly endometriosis is. I have found that there's a lot of misconception about what endometriosis is. A lot of people think endometriosis is a term for painful periods, which is not true. Painful periods can be a symptom of endometriosis, but that's not what endometriosis is. So I just wanted to clarify in case any of you aren't aware of what exactly it is. So I'm reading off of the Johns Hopkins Medicine Journal online. Their definition of endometriosis is: endometriosis is a common gynecological condition affecting an estimated 2 to 10% of American women of childbearing age. The name of this condition comes from the word endometrium, which is the tissue that lines the uterus. During a woman's regular menstrual cycle, the tissue builds up and is shed if she does not become pregnant. Women with endometriosis develop tissue that looks and acts like endometrial tissue outside of the uterus, usually on other reproductive organs inside the pelvis or in the abdominal cavity. Each month, this misplaced tissue responds to the hormonal changes of the menstrual cycle by building up and breaking down just as the endometrium does, resulting in small bleeding inside of the pelvis. This leads to inflammation, swelling, and scarring of the normal tissue surrounding the endometriosis implants. When the ovary is involved, blood can become embedded in the normal ovarian tissue, forming a blood blister surrounded by a fibrous cyst called an endometrioma. I will have this article linked down below, so if you want to continue reading the rest of the article, it explains the different theories behind what causes endometriosis, symptoms of endometriosis, as well as different treatments out there. So if you are just curious to read more about it, or if you suspect you might have endometriosis, this is a great article for you to read and learn more about this disease. As I mentioned before, the doctor informed John that I have stage 3 endometriosis. And based on what my doctor told John and based on what my nurse informed me the day after my surgery, I had a phone conversation with her and she reviewed all of the doctor's notes with me. I have it written down here so I wouldn't forget. My doctor found endometriosis and adhesions, or adhesions are like scarring from endometriosis. Adhesions and endometriosis were found on the outside of my uterus, on both of my ovaries, both of my fallopian tubes, on the outside of my bladder, and on the outside of my bowels. So I had quite a bit of endometriosis all throughout my pelvis. One thing that I found most shocking when I spoke with my nurse the day after my procedure was she explained to me the extent of endometriosis on both of my fallopian tubes. Last year at my previous fertility clinic, I had an HSG test done, and that test looked to see if my fallopian tubes were open and clear, which that test showed that they were. And my nurse explained to me that when my doctor went in surgically to look at everything, I had extensive endometriosis and scarring on both of my fallopian tubes. If I can find a good quality picture or diagram of what I'm about to explain to you, I will, and I'll insert it somewhere here on the screen. But I'll use my arm and my hand as an example. I'm not a doctor, so please excuse me if I mispronounce anything or don't properly explain it. This is just how she explained it to me. At the end of the fallopian tubes, there are fimbria, which are like little fibers. So like, pretend this is my fallopian tube and my fingers are the little fimbria. The purpose of the fimbria is when the egg is released from the ovary, the fimbria latch onto the egg and bring it into the fallopian tube. And according to what my doctor wrote in my notes, the fimbria on both of my fallopian tubes were completely, like, he said they were like stuck, like they were glued together. My nurse informed me that it was so bad that basically it was nearly impossible for the fimbria to latch onto an egg, which meant it was nearly impossible for me to become pregnant. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional about this, but she said it was nearly impossible for me to become pregnant because of the damage to my fallopian tubes. She did say though that my doctor excised as much of the endometriosis as he could, along with the adhesions on my fallopian tubes and on the fimbria. She said he removed as much of it as he could. So instead of being all stuck together, now they are more free moving, and hopefully they will be able to function as they normally should and be able to latch onto an egg and be able to transport that into the fallopian tubes. It's just, it is really crazy. It's kind of surreal finally having answers. A part of me is still in disbelief, but at the same time, thinking back to all the symptoms I've had over the years and everything I've gone through, I'm like, of course I have endometriosis. Like, it all just makes sense. The symptoms I've had, I haven't really shared with you guys just because I wasn't sure if I had endometriosis or not. And this whole infertility thing has like, it really messes with you, and being told over and over again that everything is normal and everything is fine, based on the preliminary test that I had done, I started thinking that all the symptoms I did have were just in my head, which is why going into the surgery, I was so scared that they weren't gonna find anything wrong with me. But now looking back, I'm like, of course, it all makes sense. So here within the next few weeks, I will be uploading a video for you guys going more in depth and explaining all the symptoms that I've had that led me to believe that I might have endometriosis. So my doctor excised as much of the endometriosis and the adhesions as he could. There are two different methods that doctors use to surgically remove endometriosis. The most common is ablation, which basically means they go in surgically and they burn off the endometriosis. And that has been proven to not be as effective in treating endometriosis. My doctor uses a method called excision, which means that they go in and they excise or cut out as much of the endometriosis and the adhesions as they can. And that has been proven to treat endometriosis better than the former method. I will be meeting with my doctor in, I think, about 2 weeks from now to sit down with him and really have a discussion about everything he's found, and kind of where we go from here. So I'm really excited for that appointment. He is apparently going to show me pictures from the surgery, and I'll get to see where the endometriosis was and what it looked like and all of that. So I'm actually really looking forward to that appointment. And I have a whole list of questions for him that keep popping up. So I'm really looking forward to that appointment just to get some clarity about everything and have some of my questions answered. After that appointment, I'll of course be updating you guys as well as to what he has to say and give you guys more details about exactly what he found and all of that. Well, last week on my Instagram, I asked you guys if you had any questions for me now that we have a diagnosis. And there was one question that was asked from every single person who responded. The question being, what happens next? Can we try on our own? Do we have to go through more fertility treatments? Like, what's the deal with trying to conceive now? What my doctor told me was that as soon as I have my next cycle, we can start trying right away. And he wants us to try on our own for a few months before jumping into fertility treatments again. And I have started my next cycle. I am a week into it now. John and I still need to sit down and really have a discussion about this. We've kind of talked about it here and there, but we never really came to a solid decision as to if we are going to try this cycle. I don't foresee us holding off on trying if we hold off at all. But I can't say for sure that we are trying this cycle, but we're talking about it, and I'm sure in a future video I will update you guys on what's going on. I will be sitting down, like I said, and filming a whole video about all the symptoms I had before being diagnosed with endometriosis, and then I will also be filming an in-depth video of my surgery experience. I'll talk to you about how I prepared for surgery, how I felt immediately after surgery, and how my recovery has gone so far. So I'll be sharing all of that with you guys. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll try to answer within the comments, or I'll include that question and answer in an upcoming video. Overall, I'm feeling really good. Having answers now, I feel a sense of peace. I feel like there's a weight lifted off my shoulders, having some answers and having some clarity into why we haven't been able to get pregnant. And I don't know what's going to happen from here. I don't know if it's gonna if we'll be able to conceive right away or if it's going to take a whole nother year. Right now I feel very hopeful, and I haven't felt this way in such a long time. And there's a part of me that feels foolish for feeling so hopeful like I do right now, but I'm just trying to take it for what it is right now and take it one day at a time and one cycle at a time. And for now, I'm embracing this feeling, and for now, I'm holding on to hope that we will be able to conceive on our own. And I'm feeling excited, and I haven't been able to say that throughout the last few years, especially after the miscarriage I had. Excitement and feeling hopeful was something that was very difficult for me, but right now I feel excited and I feel hopeful, and I'm just embracing it, and I'm hoping and praying for the best. So yeah, that's all I have to share with you today. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you all so much for the prayers as I prepared and went through my surgery. I appreciate you all. I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye.